the kind of society we want to be for all of us. I think maybe we can drop the murderous, but we should feel a sense of rage about it, because it's only through something that really spurs you on to action that it's going to change.
But, I mean, did you find it kind of surprising that the political discourse had reached a point in this country? I mean, did you put it down to the fact that it was because there was a woman in the job, or was it because politics in general has become so horrific, and social media obviously enables every person in the country to be a commentator and what have you if they choose to? I mean, how much of it do you think was to do with, not you personally necessarily, but you as a woman, and how much of it is just, you know, politics has gone absolutely toxic?
I think it would have been there even if it hadn't been for the new media, and that's kind of a depressing thing to say. I was surprised by it. I mean, I'd had, issues related to my gender before I became Prime Minister. I mean, the deliberately barren comment and all of that kind of stuff had happened before I was Prime Minister. But it seemed to me it was like having the first woman Prime Minister let out this wellspring of enthusiasm from women and from many men, the sort of people who would, just canter over to me, including lots of men, and say, I don't even vote for you, but would you sign this for my daughter because I want to give it to her when I get home? So this sort of wellspring of, sort of inspiration, and finally, and it does mean my daughter can grow up in a society where she'll be treated equally. So there was that. But there was also this underside of sexism, really violent, ugly sexism that came forward. And I think it finds easier expression because of the social media, but I think it would have been there anyway. And I had thought we were beyond that, and it's kind of depressing that we're not. But at least we know exactly where the balance of it is now and what more remains to be done for women to be truly equal. And I think even people who may not remember me as a good Prime Minister, I think for whoever the next woman is, there will be a bit of a, pause, breathe, whatever else this female Prime Minister does, we don't want it to be like that for her again. There'll be a stop.
People behind you too. Which brings me to this in the round is something we're trying to get used to. So please excuse the backs. Maybe we'll do that in a little while. I think that might mess things up. Which brings me, of course, to the speech that defined your Prime Ministership, your famous sexism and misogyny speech. And there are many things you said in that speech Of the many things I can quote from the speech, the one thing that really I think was so instructive was when you said you were standing obviously at the dispatch box and you were pointing down to the chair in which you normally sat. You were saying, there were things said about me that would never be said about a man sitting in this chair. And that to me was such a powerful statement, because it was saying, okay, this is not about me being Labor or me introducing a carbon tax or me being, anything to do with policy. This was to do with me being a woman. And that speech resonated around the world. And let's not even think about the reaction of the Canberra Press Gallery, who just simply, plain and simple, didn't get it. But around the world, millions, thousands, if not millions of people got it. Can you tell me a little bit about why you decided to speak the way you did on that day, what it was that got you going and why you did it?
I can. I've actually kept the handwritten notes that I wrote while I was in the chamber, so I'm not sure what I'll ever do with them, but I do still have them. When I first became Prime Minister, I thought to myself then, I don't need to put in the foreground being a woman. Of course, I want to speak for women. Of course, I want to govern for women. Of course, I want to do good things for women. But I didn't think I needed to put it right in the foreground because it was just so obvious, and it was going to be commented. It was going to be commented on, and it was going to be so much of what came to define my prime ministership without me constantly pointing to it. And then as, the days in office went on, it just seemed to me increasingly I was getting the burden of this, that sort of, misogynist underside, and really none of the benefits that could come with being the first female Prime Minister because I wasn't putting it in the foreground. And so all of this sort of swirled round. Obviously, I did want to speak to women, and we did some policies which were terrific for women, equal pay, social and community services workers and the like. But this was all, in and around me, in my head, in the environment, in our politics. And then we got to that parliamentary debate, and I must admit it was a, sort of crack point in my thinking that I thought, after everything I've had to see on the internet, after all the gendered abuse that I've seen in newspapers that has been called at me across the dispatch box, now of all things, I've got to listen to Tony Abbott lecture me about sexism. Like, that's what, gave the sort of emotional start to the speech of "I will not." And once I'd started, it just sort of got a life of its own.
Did it, Emma? But then, of course, that very same Mr. Abbott accused you of using the gender card. Now, why is it that this expression is used whenever women stick up for their rights?
Oh, I wish I knew. It just amazes me that we can be having this infantile conversation about gender wars, and so you really feel like and it's Mr. Abbott, but it is far broader than the current Prime Minister. You just feel like saying, well, if it was your daughter and she was putting up with sexist abuse at work, what would you advise her to do? Because apparently, if she complains, she is playing the victim and playing gender wars, and if she doesn't complain, then she really is a victim. So in your analysis, what does this woman do? And we've got to be able to say, strongly to women and girls, you've got a right to an environment that treats you with respect, treats you as an equal, and raising your voice about that isn't starting a war, it isn't playing the victim, it's just asking for what simply is right.
Equality. Let's move on to talk about your Prime Ministership. Now, there are two things that no one can take from you. One is that you are one of only 28 people who've been Prime Minister of this country since Federation. You served 3 years and 3 days, which in fact was longer than our first Prime Minister, Edmund Barton, longer than Harold Holt. Okay, he drowned. But longer than Billy McMahon on your own side of politics, longer than Kevin Rudd, and longer than Gough Whitlam. So of the 28 Prime Ministers we've had, including Tony Abbott, you are ranked number 14 in terms of tenure. So that's not a bad innings. Secondly, the other thing that no one can take away from you is that you are and always will be Australia's first woman Prime Minister. In your 3 years and 3 days in the job, you achieved an extraordinary amount. I mean, I think it's 590 pieces of legislation, many of them fiercely contested, despite the hung Parliament. I guess my question is, why why was it that you had such trouble communicating what a great job you were doing?
Well, I wouldn't have minded knowing the answer to that earlier too. I think, once again, that's a mix of things. Can you always be better at your craft? Should we have been better at our craft? Then maybe the answer to that is yes. But, I think across the government we had some remarkable communicators, and fortunately some of them are staying in Labor politics. I know, for example, Tanya Plibersek is here tonight. And I think Tanya genuinely is one of the most gifted communicators in Australian politics. So, yes, it's something to do with us, but it's also, I think, a lot to do with the changing media environment. And I think that this is something across democratic politics in Western countries. It's not just us, it's President Obama, it's Prime Minister Cameron, all trying to work out what is the rhythm with which you govern, given this media age where things are instantaneous, which means the truth can be instantaneously given to thousands and thousands of people in a way that you never could before. But in an age in which lies and half-truths and odd political claims and silly slogans can also get automatic and widespread currency. And I think that is a challenge for all of us to think through. I think we live in a remarkable age which could truly enrich our democracy, but we haven't actually found the way of using these new tools to do that yet.
We're going to come to some of your policies and your legacy in a moment, but I just want to ask you a slightly more kind of mundane question. As I've been sort of walking around Sydney the last few days, just on the streets and shops, people have been sort of coming up to me and saying, "Now you're going to be talking to Julia Gillard. Would you please ask her?" So I would be here for hours to get through all of the questions. But one question that a number of people said to me, that they really would love to be able to understand what it's actually like being the Prime Minister and doing the job and being in the Lodge and all of that stuff. So I told somebody I'd ask you this question. Could you I know there's no such thing as an average day in politics, but can you sort of construct a sort of average day in Canberra? You wake up in the morning in the Lodge and you're going to end up at question time and doing whatever you do. Can you just tell us, do you get breakfast in bed from the staff? Or how does it work?
How does it work? Well, a parliamentary day, no 2 days were the same, and so you could wake up anywhere, Canberra, somewhere around Australia, overseas, but a parliamentary day, I'd get up in Canberra.
What time?
Well, it would depend on whether I had morning TV, but sometimes as early as before 5 a.m. Sometimes you get the luxury of, the clock being closer to 6 than, but early, always get up early. Get across the 4 newspapers that you could get in Canberra that early in the morning as quickly as possible. I found out since leaving the Lodge that the woman, Margaret, whose job it was to make sure the newspapers were there as early as humanly possible, used to spend a lot of time agonising what order to put them in because she'd be desperately trying to put the one with the nicest news on top. And there just wasn't one with the nicest news.
Were there some days when the papers got lost?
No, never. I always looked at the newspaper